Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Today is January 30th, 2025. This is the 233rd episode of the RNL show. My name is Andy Z, and I'm here today with Annie Day.
Very glad to be here.
All right, it's good to be doing this with you. It's going to be fun. We have a very important show, but this is a show about a real revolution. A revolution to get rid of this system that oppresses people here and around the world. A system that has given birth to this MAGA fascism in this country, a country founded on genocide and slavery. This is a show about a revolution for a liberating future, for the emancipation of all of humanity.
And because we're about the emancipation of all of humanity for real, we base ourselves on and we promote the leadership of Bob Avakian, the revolutionary leader who's brought forward the new communism. The new communism, which bases itself on a scientific understanding of how breaking all oppressive traditions' chains is actually possible. A scientific understanding of how to get there, how to understand the problem, and that revolutionary solution.
Over the past two episodes of the RNL show, we've featured an important message from Bob Avakian. 2025, a new year, profound new challenges, and a profoundly positive way forward in the face of real horror. Bob Avakian begins this message with this.
Trump 2025 is not just another administration coming into office. This is fascism.
Heads are spinning. People feel jolted. They feel overwhelmed. They don't understand what's happening.
Donald Trump's allies vowed a campaign of shock and awe as soon as he returned to the Oval Office. And in just a matter of days, he has already followed through on that chaotic promise.
Within hours of taking the oath of office, an historic blitz of executive actions signed on his first day.
We're getting rid of all of the cancer. I call it cancer.
Trump's new appointed budget director has said the point is to traumatize people, to instill fear in them. Bob Avakian said, this is fascism.
And that's what we're going to get into more deeply in today's episode. We are very excited to announce that recently Bob Avakian did a two-part interview with Sunsara Taylor, one of the co-hosts of this show. It's a wide-ranging interview, and in today's episode, we're going to bring you a rough cut of the first part of part one. Let's watch.
All right, so there's a lot that we want to cover in this interview, but I want to dive right in with what we're most immediately facing right now, which is in just a matter of days, the Trump MAGA fascist regime is going to assume the power of the presidency. This time around, he's got the backing of all three branches of government. He is assembling a cabinet full of woman haters, Christian fascist crusaders, immigrant bashers, science deniers, climate destroyers, outright lunatics. And I wonder if you could just help us understand, what are we facing with this regime? How should we understand the stakes of this?
Well, I think, it's very interesting. We're facing fascism. And, I said it's very interesting because, as you recall, no doubt, toward the end of the election, the Democratic Party hacks finally came out and said, oh, this Trump, he's a fascist. Then as soon as he won the election, oh, well, he's not really a fascist. He's not really a threat to our capitalist imperialist. Oh, they didn't say capitalist imperialist, to our democracy. After all, he's the president. So, and then you see this whole parade of all these tech, bros and, heads of corporations and Democratic Party officials and, commentators from MSNBC and whatever rushing to, to get on the good foot with Trump, So this is a very serious situation, as you said. There really, it really is fascism, nothing less, which means like the undisguised, open, aggressive dictatorship of this system of capitalism, imperialism, as you said, in the world's most powerful capitalist imperialist country. And a lot of people, including a lot of these ruling class figures and major media figures and so on, don't want to acknowledge, or maybe can't even believe that it's fascism, even though they said it right before the election as kind of an election ploy, because of their American chauvinism. The idea of American exceptionalism, that this great country, how could it actually become fascist? Which, of course, ignores the whole history of this country, which began with slavery and genocide, and then even after slavery was ended, had generations of, the most unbelievably atrocious and terroristic, rule over masses of people, particularly black people, but others as well, for generations, right up until the recent times of as late as the 1960s. So if you actually look at this so-called exceptional country, you can easily see how it could become all-out fascist with an open, undisguised dictatorship. The rule of the capitalist class is always a dictatorship in reality, but this is an open, undisguised, aggressive, blatantly, as you said, racist, misogynist, and all the rest.
So why did you, pretty much starting immediately after the election, in your social media at Bob Avakian Official, and then repeatedly, including in the major New Year's statement you just delivered recently, insist that now is not the time for demoralization and despair. It is a time for righteous anger and revolutionary determination.
Well, because unlike these ruling class figures, we have no interest in this, in getting along with this fascism. The people who, and there are tens of millions, the people who have hated it for years, ever since Trump emerged as a major figure on the scene almost 10 years ago, the people who recognized how terrible it is and have hated it for all this time have no interest in now finding a way to go along with it. The fact that it's been brought to power through the very workings of this system, which is something to think about. It didn't come to power through a coup. It came, it wasn't a military takeover. It came to power through the normal processes of this system. And the fact that that could happen should tell us something very basic about the whole system itself, along with everything else that people need to know about the actual nature and of this system and what it actually does. But we, the people who hate all this racism, misogyny, immigrant persecution, and all the rest of it, who don't want to go back to a dark ages time when we can't even accept basic scientific understandings like evolution, and instead we're supposed to believe some thousands of years old biblical mythology, in place of science. That's something also we should talk about. This is a rejection not of the 1960s and all the, righteous struggle that went up against the racism and the misogyny and the rest, and the persecution of gay people, etc. But it's also, going back even before the Civil War. That's why you see a lot of these MAGA fascists carrying Confederate flags. And even beyond that, it's going back to the Enlightenment of several centuries ago, which, even though it was, part of the rise of capitalism, nevertheless had the very important element of saying that things should be approached on the basis of actually looking at reality and applying reason to try to understand reality. And these Christian fundamentalist fascists, and that's what they are, who are the driving force behind this fascism and behind Trump, behind the whole MAGA thing, they want to go back and reject all of that and substitute mindless lunacy in place of it. So the reason why it's time to be angry and full of revolutionary determination is, that we refuse to go back to that. We refuse to allow this system to drag us back into a dark ages kind of existence, along with all the terrible forms of oppression that it's going to be aggressively reinforcing.
So the Revcoms have raised, and you have put out as well in your social media, two very important slogans. One is, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. And the second is, this whole system is rotten and illegitimate. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of these two slogans, each of them in their own right, and maybe also how they relate to each other.
The refusal to accept fascism is extremely important. That goes along with what we were just talking about, the question you just asked. Why is this a time for righteous anger and revolutionary determination? But the first part of that first slogan is also very important. It's the foundation that people need to have to really take this on. That is, in the name of humanity. That's the orientation that people need, not, what's good for America, the most predatory destructive imperialist power in the history of the world. Not what's good for America, but what are the interests of humanity. And we proceed from that. And on that basis, for the people of the whole world, it is a very disastrous development to have this fascism coming to power in this most powerful capitalist imperialist country, which is already wreaking havoc on masses of people around the world as well as in this country anyway. But this is going to take it to a much more aggressive, even more extreme level and expression. So in the name of humanity, that's how we approach this. So that's the first slogan. And out of that, because we understand what the effects of this and the consequences of this is for humanity, that is why we refuse to accept it. Unlike all these bourgeois capitalist politicians who are rushing to make, good with Trump and go kiss the ring and all the rest of it, we have no interest in that. Our interests lie with the masses of humanity. It goes along with what I've said before. The important thing is the whole world. The whole world comes first, not American imperialism and American chauvinism with the ridiculous and outrageous idea that this country, with its terrible history and present reality, is somehow better and more important than every other place in the world, and that the people here are somehow special and more important than all the masses of humanity in the billions around the world. So that's the basis for the first slogan. Now, as for the second slogan, it goes to what I was saying just a little while ago. This fascism arose out of and is fed by the soil of this whole system and this whole history, the whole history of this country. If you just look at the history, look. A lot of people said, back in, the 80s and so on, they rose up against South Africa and apartheid. What was being done to people in this country, particularly though not only in the South, from the time shortly after the Civil War all the way up through the 1960s, was every bit as horrific, if not more so, than what was happening, the terrible oppression of the masses of African people in South Africa under apartheid. So, how can you look at that and not recognize, once again, that this is the soil out of which this fascism has grown? It is why, once again, you see the Confederate flags being, taken through the Capitol on January 6th at the time, shortly after the last election. It is why these people, some of these people openly say that slavery was better, supposedly even better for black people than the time since. This is what you're dealing with in this country, and it is this system and the way it has developed in this particular country that has given rise to this fascism. And that should tell everybody that there's something fundamentally sick about this whole system. Plus the fact that it's a completely outmoded way for people to live and for society to be organized. So that, a small number of billionaires, for example, control more wealth than more than half the world's population. And that's just not some kind of like, we should redistribute the wealth kind of thing. It flows out of the nature of a system that's based on exploiting masses of people all over the world. The women in Bangladesh, literally the children in Africa, the people in Haiti and other places in the Caribbean and Latin America who are, working under, horrific conditions, producing the wealth that goes into the coffers, if you will, of these billionaires and the heads of the capitalist system in this country. Just think about a simple fact. You hear about all this stuff about immigrants and Trump talking about renaming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. Think about a simple fact like this, which tells you a lot of what you need to know. The wages of people producing things that are consumed in this country in Mexico are approximately 1/10 of what people working in this country working on the same things make. And that is why, for example, even people who are not well off in this country can have a certain amount of consumer goods because of the super exploitation of people in these countries all over the world, which enables these consumer goods in this country to be relatively low priced. And this is blood money that we don't want and that no decent person should want. And it's absolutely absurd that this is the way the world is organized and enforced on the masses of people. You know, think about it. There is the technology and the knowledge that has existed for some time now and is constantly being developed so that everyone in the world could have all their basic needs met, and there would still be a lot to enable people to engage in cultural efforts and all kinds of other, things beyond just mere survival. There is absolutely no reason why anyone is suffering from want in this world today with the technology and knowledge that exists. There's only one reason. There's no good reason, but there is a reason. And that reason is that all this is controlled by a small number of capitalist exploiters who don't just exploit within this country or any other particular country, but super exploit people all over the world, especially in places like Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. So, this fascism flows out of all of this. It's an extreme, but in a certain sense, a logical expression or extension of all that I've been talking about. And it's completely unnecessary. We could have a whole different way to live. And this is what's being kept from people. And understanding, that there's no reason why we have to keep living this way with such deprivation and destruction, to say nothing about the threat of nuclear war that's becoming greater these days between the U.S. on the one hand and its rivals in Russia and China, all of whom, by the way, are nuclear-armed imperialist powers, and with the whole destruction of the environment, all of which is posing existential threats to humanity as a whole. There's absolutely no reason why we're still living this way. So just to go back to that, that's why we say this system is completely rotten and illegitimate. Any system that brings about the things that I'm talking about and perpetuates itself on the backs of masses of people, any such system is completely illegitimate. And yes, there is a positive alternative to all this, much as they don't want people to know it.
So I'd like to pick up on the second part of that slogan. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. Let's say we had a time machine and we could just fast forward into the future, into a revolutionary society, one that's based in the Constitution that you wrote for the new Socialist Republic in North America. How would things be different? What would it look like? What would it feel like? I know it's a really big question, but maybe you could just give a sense of what it would be like.
Yes, that is a big question, but it's an important question. Some things would be very different and would feel very different right away. For example, under the present system in this country, more than 1,000 people are killed by police every year, disproportionate numbers of black people and other people of color. There's mass incarceration of people who've been deprived by this system of a decent way to live and have been essentially, many of them, millions and millions of them, locked out of the formal economy. So immediately, that would be done with. Immediately, yes, there will be a need for security forces. There will be a need for forces to defend the revolution, while at the same time defending the rights of the people in a way that is not done under this system. But there will no more be this rampant and wanton murder of murder by police of masses of people over and over and over again, killing more than 3 people a day in this country, and doing it in the most wanton, and brutal ways, infused in many cases just with the most grotesque racism. That will be over right away in day one. And, it will not be the situation where people are without a means to a decent life, even though there will be a transition period where breaking free from the whole world capitalist imperialist economy will be a real struggle. One of the goals is we are no longer going to build an economy based on exploiting the children in Africa and women in the tens and even hundreds of millions, not only in Bangladesh but around the world, and masses of people. At the present time, for example, under this system, the great majority of the things that are produced, that are consumed in this country, are produced outside of this country. And by the way, for all the Trumpites and all the rest of the, lunatic people out there, that is not going to change. Trump is not going to bring back all these old, factory jobs and everything, because this system could not survive for any period of time, maybe not even a week, if it weren't exploiting and super exploiting these people around the world. And we are going to move away from that. And as we're doing so, everyone will be able to and will be involved in developing the economy and having a decent way to live, even while we're carrying out the struggle to completely break free of this imperialist parasitism feeding off the masses of people in the world. So that will be radically different too. Also, certain things like, I mentioned evolution. Evolution is written into the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic that I've written. It's a scientifically established fact, one of the most firmly established facts in all of science, and in the new society, it's going to be treated as such. And if people don't understand that, then there'll be education and struggle as necessary to enable them to understand it. And other things, for example, the right to abortion as well as the right to birth control, that is also written into this Constitution. There will be no depriving of women of their fundamental rights. The same with the rights of LGBT people. That is written also into this Constitution. That is foundational to what we're talking about. So on every level, in terms of abolishing the oppression and exploitation that is the foundation of this system, which people just assume is the normal way that things have to be, all that will be, overturned and transformed and done away with, starting on day one. And then there's a whole realm of education and culture, which, the purpose of which will not be to brainwash people and condition them to serve an exploiting system. But the purpose of it will be to enable people actually to pursue the truth on a scientific basis, giving expression to curiosity, which is suppressed in 100 ways under this system. It's one of the most striking things, especially these days, the way in which curiosity is suffocated in people. The lack of curiosity is a striking phenomenon in this society now, a whole different culture which gives expression to uplifting relations among people, emancipating relations. And then there's the whole international dimension where the whole orientation of the new socialist government will not be to carry out military action to slaughter people or to back something like the genocide now being carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people in order to reinforce by bloody means the basis for all this exploitation and super exploitation of people around the world. Instead, the whole international orientation of this new society and new government will be to support people rising up against this and fighting for the same emancipating goals. So we could go on, but in every level, things will be radically different. And, people say, people might, like to go back to John Lennon's Imagine. You might say this is just a dream, to paraphrase that, but it's not. It's grounded in the reality of what is possible now, as I spoke to. Thousands of years of human history and development have led to a situation where there's a foundation for everything I'm talking about to actually be achieved. There is a material foundation in the world for this. As I said, in the technology and the knowledge that exists. The only thing that's standing in the way, and doing so in a monstrously bloody way, is this system of capitalism, imperialism. And as that's swept away through a revolution of millions of people, then we can go to work to actually bring about the reality of what I'm talking about, some of which, once again, will begin right on day one. No, there will not be any more mothers and fathers, loved ones and others, having to cry these tears of anguish and outrage over their loved ones being cut down by the people who enforce the system. Instead, this system will be backing the masses of people. And as I've said before, with the new security forces that are envisioned and will be brought into being with this revolution and envision this constitution, the orientation that people will be led with is that they would rather give up their lives themselves than wantonly kill masses of people, as happens every day under this system.
Well, I'm going to want to ask you more about this as we go along, because I think today people have such an impoverishment of even being able to imagine that anything could be different than what we see today. And what you're describing is really emancipating. It's very liberating. And I think it's important that we explore this more fully.
So that was just the beginning of this two-part interview that Sansara did with Bob Avakian, and it's just incredible, the scope of going from the horror of this fascism all the way to how the world could be radically different. This really bears repeated listening, and it's very inspiring, and it also indicates the struggle that we have to wage.
Yeah, I just thought that really giving life to the fact that there really is a positive way forward in the face of very real horror. And that's just the beginning of what's in this two-part interview that really is wide-ranging, everything from getting way more deeply into questions of the content of the new communism, what's new in the new communism, why do people have to understand what the nature of capitalism is and how it's different than just the idea of greed or the problem is the CEOs. Some very deep questions about the role that Bob Avakian is playing and how he sees his own leadership, why you should follow him. These are going to be a very big deal in the coming weeks to get out, to watch together with others, to spread.
Yeah, and he gave very heavy emphasis too to the need to defeat this fascism, including in that slogan, breaking it down, the two parts in the name of humanity. We refuse to accept a fascist American. I was talking with a friend, Annie, this the other day, just one anecdote, who was, just very upset about all these friends, cancer researchers, environmental workers, all those who've got notices that they can't speak anymore. Their jobs are suspended. Now, I'm not sure if some of that has been rescinded or not now. But as I said earlier, this is actually the point, shock and awe of this fascism. And I said to this person, I said, you know this is fascism. You even have spoken of that, but you're not living in the reality that it is fascism. It's emerging, and we cannot afford to be just shocked and awed. We have to, and demoralized, even worse, or paralyzed. This is a time to be fighting this fascism. We're going to be getting into that in a minute. But I think we just a little bit more on these interviews, and then let's move on to some of what the Revcoms are doing.
Yeah, these interviews, the New Year's message from Bob Avakian are a pretty historic intervention at a time where history is going to pivot. What happens one way or the other right now really is going to determine the future. And what we're hearing from Bob Avakian is the leadership that people need. And I'll just say, look, people are going to act one way or the other in this situation, what you're describing, based on what they understand, based on how they understand reality. And these interviews are key in helping people understand what they need to. What is the nature of the problem we're up against, and what's the solution? How are we going to unite all who can be united to defeat this fascism? And how are we going to, through a big world historic revolutionary process, get rid of the system that has spawned this fascism? And so key right now is getting this in front of millions and millions of people, and that's going to require funds. We've talked about that a lot on this show. We've been in the middle of a campaign to raise big funds to get Bob Avakian's social media impacting throughout society. And we're in the middle of a 2-week drive right now to raise $10,000 to get the New Year's message out, and now to get these interviews both out in the world, advertised, posters, palm cards, stickers spread out all across the country, and to raise the funds we need to produce these interviews as fast as we can so that they can reach you, so that they can reach many others. So donate. And that $10,000 is just really like a piece of what we need. We need, honestly, 10 times more than that. But people should give. They should give generously. And they should write to us with your questions, with your ideas, with the obstacles you're running into in raising the funds that are needed right now. You can write to info@BobAvakianOfficialEverywhere.org.
I think it's important that you brought up that people act on what they understand. This is a core understanding from Bob Avakian, a core thing that people have to have a scientific approach to reality, to be able to know the world, to be able to change it. And This means getting involved. We do have to act, and the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity has been out in the world, fighting against this entire Trump agenda, taking up that slogan, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America, and doing so from the perspective of the possibility this could mean for building a force to make an actual and lead an actual revolution involving millions and millions of people. So check out the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation on our website, revcom.us. Join with them, get out in the streets with us, and let's change the world.
The popular YouTube show, Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan, just did an important episode on a Revcom march in MacArthur Park on New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. Channel 5 is a thoughtful and refreshing show. They ask serious and substantive questions about the nature of capitalism. What is a revolution? Why is a revolution necessary? And what will be different with the new communism developed by the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian? We're going to play 2 short clips from the show and encourage you to go on over to their YouTube channel and watch the full episode. youtube.com/channel5YouTube.
We're in the soon-to-be fascist America, and we're here to say hell no to Trump, to fascism, and to the whole damn system of capitalism, imperialism, which gave birth to this nightmare.
This country has fucked up the rest of the world and destroyed people's homelands and forced millions of people from the Congo to Latin America to flee their homelands and seek refuge in places like the U.S., and then they turn around and call them criminals and demonize immigrants.
We not cross the border crossed us. They stole Mexican territory. It's us territory. But Trump is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy motherfucker, though.
They're coming in from prisons. They're coming in from jails. These aren't people. These are animals.
If you listen to Trump, why is healthcare messed up? Immigrants. Why is there debt? Because of immigrants. Why do the police kill black people? Because of immigrants. Fentanyl crisis. Why is that? Because of immigrants. Everything. They're the scapegoats. They're sort of the spearhead for a whole fascist onslaught against people who are already most vulnerable and oppressed under this system.
This whole system is illegitimate and rotten.
Fascism, capitalism, imperialism.
The U.S. enacting coups all over the world, backing reactionary governments, environmental destruction, people being forced out of their country because their environment is no longer livable.
Donald Trump's mass deportations are underway.
Como estamos viendo, el primer convoy de mexicanos deportados están llegando a Ciudad Juárez.
Bien, hasta ahorita tengo salud, pero de mi familia no he sabido nada.
In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America.
That's why we need revolution. We need a whole different system.
I know people who came out of the 1960s who gave up on revolution because they didn't see a way out, and who turned to all kinds of, shooting up, smoking crack, because they didn't have any hope, not just because they were suffering, but because they lost the hope. And, a brother who came out of prison talked about how it wasn't until he found, like Bob Avakian, talking about how to revive the communist movement and save the project of emancipation, that he found, like, there's something to live for and not just to kill ourselves doping up with the enemy's poison.
Unlike so many others, he never gave up on revolution because the system didn't get better, and he's forged a new communism.
Bob Avakian apparently has a new constitution for a new communist reality.
It does lay out the basic principles and a lot of very concrete guidelines and institutional, procedures that could actually guide people on how to begin the day after seizing power, so to speak, and actually transforming society in a way that would be emancipating.
He's re-envisioned the project of human emancipation.
As we just saw in the clips from the Channel 5 video, the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity is on the offensive, taking to the streets against this whole fascist agenda. This coming Saturday, February 1st, the Revcom Corps has called for demonstrations in different cities under the slogans Emergency, In the Name of Humanity, We Refuse to Accept a Fascist America. This whole system is rotten and illegitimate. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. The Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity has been going out with this to hospitals, to neighborhoods, to schools. And in Chicago, the Revcom Corps is taking up the fight against the vicious, inhuman spearhead of Trump fascism, the mass deportation of masses of immigrants. In the past week, These MAGA fascist maggots have bragged of snatching up 1,500 people a day and putting many in shackles and on military transport planes. And this is just the start. In Chicago, as a key part of this fight, the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity has been organizing and uniting with people in patrols of the streets of Chicago to observe ICE activity and to defend the rights and lives of the immigrants. We're going to hear now from Leo Pargo, a leader of the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity in Chicago, in a social media post. Then we're going to follow that video with a music video from the revolutionary band Outernational of their song Todos Somos Ilegales, a song to all the defiant ones, saying our time has come, fighting for a new way, fighting for a new day. And then I'll be back with Annie Day with some important words from Bob Avakian.
Are you going to fall in line and sound like these rabid white racists, or are you going to actually fight to put an end to what you and the immigrants are being put through?
My name is Leo. I'm one of the leaders of the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity here in Chicago. We've been out mobilizing patrols to catch ICE red-handed with any illegitimate detainees that they might be doing on our immigrant brothers and sisters. And while we've been out, we've been coming across questions like,
how do you make black people care about this issue? Like, what would you say to others?
I'll say this. You should care because we're all human beings. You should care because the same system that has forced our immigrant brothers and sisters to come here from all over the world is the same system that has been putting black people through hell for centuries. You should care because we do not have to live this way.
I mean, these fascists have been demonizing all kinds of immigrants. They're saying that Haitian immigrants are eating your cats and dogs. They're saying that, Venezuelan immigrants are invading. The question is, when you actually see them coming after people with their whole white supremacist program, what are you going to do? Are you going to fall in line and sound like these rabid white racists, or are you going to, actually fight to put an end to what you and the immigrants are being put through? I mean, look, it can't just be that they actually get to play their game of divide and conquer. We're just coming after the criminal, immigrants. Well, next week there'll be a new line of criminals that they're coming after, and before too long, black people are on the chopping block, LGBTQ people. I mean, they've already done all these things with these executive orders that Trump has done. I mean, this is fascism unleashed. Fascism that's fully embracing, white supremacy, patriarchal and xenophobic program, denying science and climate change. I mean, this lunacy has to be opposed by everybody.
And another thing that's come up in South Shore is, I know your ass ain't talking about sacrificing yourself for these Venezuelans when we don't fuck with each other like that. And I'll say for myself and the Revcoms, not only will we fuck with Venezuelans, but we will stand with them. We'll stand with Haitians, Ukrainians, Africans, Mexicans, and anybody that's coming under attack. The revolutionary leader that we follow, Bob Avakian, leads us to defend the rights and lives of people who are being targeted by this system, and to take the offensive in opposition to this fascism and the system that spawned it. And we call on you, black people, white people, Asians, Latinos, instead of being played to fall for their divide and conquer game, while they lock in their nightmare future, get with the Revcom Corps now for the emancipation of humanity.
somos ilegales. Fighting for a new way and a new day. Todos somos ilegales. I walk the desert in the dead of night. I crawl through sewers, no clean water inside. I cross the river to the other side, the American land of parasite. I'm that secret, that dirty little feature, the bones in the closet, lies told by teachers, the food, the clothes, the land, the phones, the buildings where your computers grow. I see that border ain't sacred or chosen. The land we stand on, every inch of it stolen. How obscene, not this people illegal. To the fight survival, the journey is lethal. Todos somos ilegales. Todos somos ilegales. To the fire once, our time has come. Todos somos ilegales. Fighting for a new way and a new day. Todos somos ilegales. Oye, 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 oye.
Necesito documentos, mírame a los ojos para que leas mi acento. Prohibido como la droga, ilegal como un nazi en una sinagoga. Contraindicado, clandestino, lo identificable lo contamino. Más de 600 millones de personas gritando luz verde para invadir Arizona. No necesito diplomas, lo que aprendí lo viví y lo almaceno en mis neuronas. Las experiencias son mis talleres, la vida es un estudio desde que se nace hasta que se muere. Así crucé para el norte buscando buena vida, componente vacío de materia consumida. Dejé a mi abuela sola para besarle el culo a Ronald McDonald y tomar Coca-Cola.
Todos somos ilegales. Todos somos ilegales. With the fire once, our time has come. Todos somos ilegales. Fighting for a new way and a new day. Todos somos ilegales. Todos somos ilegales. Todos somos ilegales. With the fire once, our time has come. Todos somos ilegales. Fighting for a new way and a new day. Todos somos ilegales.
So that brings us to the end of today's episode. We want to thank the team with the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Become a Patreon to support this show at patreon.com/the Revcoms. Put a comment in the comment section below and hit the notification bell.
All right, Annie, we want to end this show with some important words from Bob Avakian's 2025 New Year's message.
We Revcoms are working tirelessly toward the goal of finally putting an end to such monstrous and completely unnecessary ruin and destruction of so many people, here and all over the world. In the interests of humanity as a whole, we are willing and prepared to make the necessary sacrifices and to call on others to make the necessary sacrifices to carry out the revolution that can bring about a liberating leap forward on the road to finally putting an end to all this madness and needless suffering, and to bringing about a world where human beings can, at long last, move beyond the mere struggle for individual survival, as well as the heavy weight of thousands of years of oppressive relations, and can truly thrive as a world community of human beings, proceeding according to fundamental principles of cooperation and capable of being fit caretakers of the earth. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. This whole system is rotten and illegitimate. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system.